Hey, I'm Howard Hamilton with Hamilton Engineers. I'm the chairman of the Joliet Region Chamber of Commerce for year 2016. This afternoon, the Joliet Chamber of Commerce welcomes Randall S. Blankenhorn to speak to us about our state's transportation systems. In January, Randy was appointed Acting Illinois Transportation Secretary by Governor Bruce Rauner, and as head of that department, Secretary Blankenhorn leads an agency of 13 offices and divisions that serve the transportation needs of Illinois across multiple modes of travel in rural, suburban, and urban environments. At I.D.O.T, he oversees a $2.8 billion operating budget that supports a workforce of 5,200 employees, with an annual oversight of more than $3.2 billion in capital projects. Prior to his appointment, Randy was Executive Director of the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, leading that agency since its inception in 2006. And that's where Randy and I first met at CMAC. His recent appointment as Acting Transportation Secretary represents a return to I.D.O.T, after having worked with the department for 22 years prior to his tenure at CMAC. While at I.D.O.T the first time, he served in a number of key positions in both the policy and planning divisions, eventually rising to the Bureau Chief of Urban Program Planning, coordinating the activities of the state's 14 metropolitan planning organizations. Mr. Blankenhorn was the point person for planning on a number of major infrastructure projects throughout Illinois, including the south extension of I-355, the new Mississippi River Bridge in Metro East, and the proposed, or is that potential, South Suburban Airport in P.A.T.O. Today, Randy is here to inform us of the needs and status of Illinois infrastructure. Please welcome Acting Transportation Secretary for the state of Illinois, Randy Blankenhorn.
Thanks, Howard. I appreciate that. And to the staff here at the Chamber, thank you so much for hosting us. Everybody for coming. This is a wonderful facility. I wish I could play a little golf afterwards, but unfortunately that's not on my schedule. On behalf of Governor Rauner, thanks everybody for coming. We are in the very end of what has been a 4-week listening tour across the state of Illinois to talk to people about transportation, about the infrastructure that they use, what it means to them, what it means to their lives, what it means to their community, what it means to their business, what it means to their families. That's what we're here out to do. I'll start this by saying we're not looking for a specific debate over specific projects. There's plenty of time to debate whether this project is a good project or a bad one. We're really here to talk about the problems that we face and what the solutions are out there as we look to invest in our infrastructure across the state of Illinois. I'd like to start with just a few facts to get the ball rolling, and just saying we are the 3rd largest interstate and bridge system in the country, the 2nd largest rail transit system. We have the world's busiest airport, along with 80 other public airports that really do a lot for the economy of their communities. We're the only state in Illinois, in the country, where all Class 1 railroads operate. We are the connection between the Great Lakes and the Gulf of Mexico. We're surrounded by rivers. We are transportation. Transportation is what Illinois is about, and what makes us work is our global economic advantage, and we've got to think about it that way. We've got to think about how we invest and how we are different and how we are attractive to business and communities in a world and global economy. We are the freight capital of North America, and nobody knows that better than you all here. And we've got to start to act like it. We've got to start to think about how we invest in that to make sure that we are moving goods efficiently, that we're really moving things in a way that makes business work better, and at the same time has limited impacts on our communities. Hey, being a freight hub has pluses and minuses. It has great jobs, and it brings a lot of trucks. We've got to think about how to balance that in a way that helps both our communities and our economy. One of the biggest and one of the only growing areas in our economy for jobs is transportation, distribution, and logistics, and that is here. That is Will County. That is what you do. And we've got to figure out how to take advantage of our position and continue to grow that. If we can't make our transportation system work, those jobs go away. And so we have to work together to make that happen. I'm a firm believer that the state of Illinois is not one economy, that we are a series of regional economies that need to connect. Will County needs to connect to greater Chicago economy. The Chicago economy needs to connect to Champaign and Peoria and East St. Louis and to Wisconsin and to Indiana. And we've got to figure out how to make that happen. And those economies connect in many, many ways because of transportation. How do we make sure that we're connecting the economies that make the upper Midwest economy work? And transportation has to be a big part of that. Congestion, reliability are issues that we face. I've been telling people over the last 25 days on this tour that a little congestion isn't such a bad thing. If we didn't have any congestion at all, then our economy probably wasn't working very well. But we're probably a little beyond where we are, and we need to think about it. But more important to me is the reliability of our system. The fact that sometimes when I come to Chicago, from Chicago to Joliet, I can get here in 45 to 50 minutes, and sometimes when I come, it takes me 2 hours and 20 minutes. When I was at CMAP before, I was almost always 45 minutes late for meetings because I refused so early because I refused to be late. And so I sat in coffee shops waiting a lot because I didn't know how long it was going to take me to get there. I think that's a problem we have to deal with. People can live with knowing this is what my commute time is. It's when it varies that it's impossible to plan, it's impossible to do the things that you need to do. When we get to questions of why do I have to leave work at 3:30 for my daughter's 5 o'clock soccer game, it's because you don't really know how long it's going to take to get there. And we've got to fix that. But reliability is not only for our commuters, it's also for our freight movement. We were in Bloomington Normal about 2 weeks ago, and the Mitsubishi people were on a panel, and they said, you know, Randy, your interstates are our warehouses. That's where our goods are. They're on your roads. And if you can't make it reliable for us, we'll find somewhere that will. And we've got to take that seriously. We've got to understand that just-in-time delivery today truly means just in time. And we've got to figure out how to make that happen. But it's not just about the economy. It's also about our communities. It's about access to jobs. It's about access to health care. It's about access to schools. It's about access to all of the destinations that we want to deal with. And in so many ways, and particularly in this part of our state, transportation so often defines a community. What it looks like, how it operates, does your downtown work? Is the train station a place where people just get on and off, or does it develop around your community? How do we think about transportation and its role? Chris Reed, who's my deputy secretary, who I hope some of you know, she was the director of highways when I was at CMAP. And we had a conversation about some ARA funding, and she said, well, you know, Randy, they're my state highways. And I said, yeah, Chris, they are, but they're our main streets. And we've got to think about them in both ways. We've got to think about them as a way to move travel regionally and sub-regionally, but we also have to think of our main streets as where economic development happens in your community, and how do we make sure that those main streets, those state highways that are your main streets, are an attractive place to do business. How do we think of it in that way? We've also all around the state been hearing, and not just in the bigger cities, that we need to think about transportation options and alternatives more broadly. My children don't want to travel the way that I do. Not that they're never going to get in a car, they are. But they want to have alternatives. They don't want to sit in traffic unless they have to. They want to be able to walk. They want to be able to take public transit. They want to be able to bike to work. They want to do these things, and we've got to figure out how to make that happen in a multimodal way. We talk multimodal pretty well. We don't walk it very well yet, but we're going to, and we're going to need some help from you all to do that. But it really, I've heard this from Quincy to Macomb to Champaign. Our little communities have the same issues with transit and with commuter passenger rail access as you do here. And it's something that is a statewide problem, and we have to address it at the statewide level. And it's not only even those cities, it's the rural areas. Where I say, you know, if my mother lives in one of those rural areas and doesn't or can't drive anymore, she still has to get to the doctor. And we've got to figure out how to make that happen if we want our mothers to be able to stay in Illinois as they grow older, which we all do. So we've got to make this alternative transportation system work in a bigger way. We have challenges, Illinois. We have gotten into a habit of boom and bust cycles of transportation funding, where we put together a capital program, and we're in pretty good shape for 5 or 6 years. We go out, we build a lot of projects, and we bond all the money away, and then when that bonding is gone, we sit and do nothing for 6, 7, 8, in some cases 10 or 12 years. That doesn't work, and it can't work. We have to find a new, sustainable way to fund transportation system over the long haul. I'm not against bonding. You know, for big, major capital things, I think it makes sense. But we already know how to borrow in Illinois. We're pretty good at it. If there's one thing that I'd like you to remember out of today's talk is pay as you go. I think we have to have a system that pays for our maintenance on a regular basis and doesn't depend on boom and bust cycles of funding. It's really doesn't make any sense to me at all that we would go out and bond a project to resurface or reconstruct a road. We've done it, we've used the money, we're paying that for that bond for 25 years, and we have to resurface that road 2 or 3 more times in that time period. That just doesn't make sense. Where's the new money coming from We've got to think about it differently. I tell people I don't mind waves in our funding, but these peaks and valleys have really got to stop. When we did Illinois First in 2001, we told people that if we didn't do something soon, we were going to have 3,000 miles of roadway in the state that would need immediate improvement. We're in the midst of our 2015 to 2020 program, and at the end of it, we will have 5,000 miles of state road that need immediate improvement. We are at the cliff. The cliff is upon us, and we've got to decide what we want to do, and that's what I'm here to talk to you about. We'll have roads that are bumpy, we'll have countless bridges that will be inadequate, our ports, which I want to talk a lot about with you today, can't handle the larger ships that are going to be wanting to come in. Our rails and bus lines will deteriorate, our airports won't meet our needs. We've got to find a new way, and we've got to find it soon. Governor Rauner talks about fixing transportation funding for a generation, not for 5 years. And I think that's the way we want to look at it, and that's the discussion that we want to have with all of you today. Having said that, we have to figure out a way to fix the state's general operating funding problem. The General Assembly and the governor did a nice job of in a very painful way, of fixing the 2015 budget. The 2016 budget looks like it is going to be just as painful and just as difficult to get through. But if we don't solve that general revenue problem, we're never going to get to talk about the capital program that you need, that we want, that drives tomorrow's economy and creates tomorrow's jobs. So we have to make sure that we're working together on all sides of this to fix Illinois' budgetary problems. What I want to do today is, we're calling this a listening tour and not the Listen to Randy Blankenhorn tour. So I really want to open this up in a conversational way, and there are a few rules that I'll throw out there. When we first started this, I didn't know at all how it would work, but we are on meeting 37 out of 39, and it's worked pretty well. Number one, as I said, I don't want to have a debate about projects. There's a time for that. That's not really what I mean. And so people say, what do you want to talk about then? I want to talk about, if we improve this rail line, if we widen this highway, what does it mean? What's the value of it? How does it impact your business? How does it impact your community? What are the positives? What are the negatives? How do we need to think about it in that way? So that's rule one. Let's look at it from, why is investing in transportation worth doing? Why should we ask taxpayers to pay more money for transportation? Should we? And if so, what are the benefits that are derived from it? The second is that we're just going to have a conversation, but I don't want a book. I don't want a chapter. I want a couple of sentences about why it is, so we can get to as many people as we can to talk about it, to tell me what it is that they're saying. The end game for this is probably by the end of next week, we will have prepared a report about what we heard. A summary of all of these meetings. We'll give it to the governor, we'll give it to the General Assembly and say, here's what the people of Illinois that wanted to talk to us had to say about investing in transportation and infrastructure as a whole. So I tell people, if I don't hear from you, there's nothing I get to say about what Joliet thinks about transportation infrastructure. So I really do want to hear, I really do want to take some time and really talk through what are the issues, what should we at the state level be thinking about? Is it worth investing in transportation here in Illinois? So with that, I am going to stop and open it up, and we'll have a little conversation here for about a half hour, I think we have. 20 minutes.
Right.
Tell me when to stop.
Okay.
All right. So, who is the brave person to go first? Yes.
My name is Judy O'Gala. I represent Eastern Will County, and I'm really glad that Governor Rauner has decided to put a hold on the projects and come out and do this. I don't know that any other governor has done that, and I think everyone in the room appreciates that. I think what needs to be done is exactly what you're doing, is looking at the projects that you have on the books today, determining whether it's the right project, or maybe we need to stop it and put it away in the drawer and run and never go back to it. If there's land purchase, such as in the airport property, maybe we sell that back to local farmers and look at that industry and say, is that something that's needed in Eastern Will County? My constituents would say no. Another thing is, we have a lot of freight issues in Elwood and Joliet, and I think it's critical that we look at what can we do today immediately, because that needs to be done. Obviously, there's a long-range plan, but what needs to be done immediately today that can ease the burden for the residents and the truckers out in that area, And then maybe the long-term projects, I heard once that a bridge for Hobo Bridge might be something. I think that's something to look at. That takes it right out of those parks, puts it on the roads. And I hope that you'll be listening to a lot of the people from Will County on jurisdictional agreements with roads that exist. Maybe the state should take over some so we can have more overweight traffic going on those. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Yes?
Yes. Can you tell me the status of the Southside Airport and the Illinois, Indiana highway from 80 to into, I believe, 65? And then thirdly, high-speed rail.
Sure. It's a pretty easy answer. All three of them are under review. As Judy said, the governor put a number of major projects on hold to take a look at from an overall perspective of the value and the costs and the benefits. And so we are underway. I believe that high-speed rail decision will be soon, very soon. I've been telling people that I think it's going to take a little more time on the Ileana and on the South Suburban Airport, and I'm looking at summer to do that. I've also told people that we're going to be up here talking to all of you, pro and con about these projects, so that it's not just us sitting in Springfield crunching numbers. We're hearing what it means, what these projects mean specifically to you. So once we get the legislature to go home, we'll have a little bit of time to come up and really sit down with the groups of you to talk about what does this mean? Is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea? Is it now? Is it later? Is it never? I think that's the conversation we want to have. So high-speed rail, I think there will be a decision soon. Ileana and South Suburban Airport this summer. Yeah.
Mr. Director, I don't know if you've heard too much about the I-80 situation, but one of the factors as a small business owner here in Joliet for 40 years, all the congestion that the intermodals have brought to us, and yes, they have brought construction, but they're pushing out, because of the congestion, the small business owner. So I-80 would be a wonderful project to widen to ease the congestion for the heart of Joliet, which is where I've been doing business for 40 years. It's widened to New Lenox. If we can widen it to the Grundy line, that would be a wonderful priority project to keep small businesses like myself in the area, not being pushed out.
Yeah, I think that's very important, and we've got to deal with it. There are truck problems and freight problems and goods movement problems here in this country. If the solutions we've had are not the right ones, and I'm not saying they are or aren't, then we got to find something. Something has to be done. Doing nothing is not the answer. So, and I think I-80 is probably one of those things we have to look at.
Thank you.
Did I see? Yes, I'm sorry. All the way in the back.
Sir, can I kind of request that I will not be on the camera and the video recording, please, when I speak? Is that possible?
That's up to you.
I'll get on my glass when the camera is off. The reason is our organization policy not to use any media technology which is not available to genius. Anyway, my name is Texter. I run a company called Element Company, and it is in the formation stage to transition into the foundation. Here's my question to the producer, British Something here. My question about the Wi-Fi access on the metro. Is there a plan that we will deploy Wi-Fi on the metro so that people, when they commute, they can make the experience time more productive?
Yeah, I know that Metro has been looking at Wi-Fi for honestly too long. This is 2015, we ought to be able to figure this out. And I think at this point, they're looking for what is a cost-effective way to do it on lines that are so long, but it is a priority for us. If you're going to be commuting, you want to make it as productive as possible. I agree.
Thank you, and we don't offer, if you have a funding problem, we will help. Because we are on foundation, so that's not an issue. I know the state is very secure on the budget, so we're going to help them.
Well, we're always looking for people to partner with us on money. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Randy?
Yeah, John.
John Brulin, CED. First of all, thank you for coming out twice to Will County. And all of us appreciate the attention that you're. I want to thank you and your staff, especially District 1, for the cooperation we get. it's easy to kick on state agencies, but if you look at the benefits and the rewards we've gotten from IDOT over the last 12, 15 years, we really owe a big thank you to IDOT and the way your people work with us, so thank you.
Well, thank you, I appreciate
The
that.
second thing is, I sit on the State Freight Advisory Council. I'm watching what's going on in Washington. It looks like there's a movement to special programming for freight at the national level, identifying projects of regional and national significance, of which we're very proud that we probably have at least one or two of those. At the very local level, we are attempting, through our Will County Freight Advisory Council, to develop a freight plan that takes into consideration not just what's been going on and sort of the immediacy of the crisis we have, but what's coming on down the road. We heard at the county board meeting this morning, as they extended the overweight allowance on Arsenal Road, thank you very much, that more of that is coming, not less. The way international business is doing business and moving freight today, they want more and more on a box or in a box. And our road systems, not just locally or statewide, not suited for that. So we're going to have to figure out, what's that balance?
Yeah.
And then thirdly, if we can continue to work with IDOT as we evolve our freight program and make sure that, there's no hidden agenda. This is not just about politics. This is about business. We, on a rolling average over the last 4 years coming out of the recession, Will County has created over 9,000 jobs a year. That's not happening in many other places. We're very proud of that, and a lot of it has to do with our transportation assets. So we want to be a part of it. Thank
Well,
you.
thanks, I appreciate it. As both John and Executive Walsh sit on our state freight task force, and I appreciate your time. We have to be able to roll these together. We have to have some overall state guidance of where we think it's going, but then it's on the ground planning that matters. And so how do we make sure we're supporting that with you? I'm glad you brought up the federal side of this. That there is going to be an extension of the transportation bill for a whole 2 months because Congress thinks they can solve it in 2 months. As we're all very sure that will happen. But there's a bigger problem, I think, and that is that we are the transportation capital of North America, and we send more money to Washington for transportation than we get back. And that's got to stop. To be perfectly frank, that's not the way you invest as a government. You invest in where things are happening, and if for transportation, that's Illinois, that's Metropolitan Chicago, that's Will County. And we've got to work together to make a real change. We did better last time in the last bill. We did a little better. Our delegation works really well together on transportation issues, and I'm really proud of that. But it's going to take all of us. This is a big lift. For us to get a better share, a more fair share, we've got to work together to figure out how we get federal investment in Illinois. That doesn't mean that we don't have to invest at the state level. We do. Or that you don't have to invest at the local level. You do. But there's got to be more of the national pie that comes back to Illinois. Yes?
I'm Pam Owens. I'm Executive Director of Joliet City Center Partnership. We're the downtown organization. So I love it when you bring up Main Streets. As George alluded to earlier, the amount of truck traffic on Interstate 80 that flies right by downtown Joliet has essentially cut our downtown off from visitors. I think people that are local in the area avoid 80, and so therefore they are avoiding downtown. And visitors are not really apt to stop and get off at that exit because they just want to get through. So that is a huge issue for downtown. But other than that, we do have one-way streets in our downtown, which are state truck routes. And we have Scott Street and Ottawa Street, which are both one-ways, essentially cutting off the main business district. And so not only cutting it off from making it easy for visitors to patronize the downtown businesses, but also they're a danger for pedestrians. So I really hope to see the state explore some flexibility with state routes that run through the Main Street business corridors and communities with some traffic slowing measures, or perhaps rerouting some of those routes, or perhaps giving some of the flexibility of how the routes that run through those important parts of communities may have some local governance.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of really good points in there, starting with I-80. When we're going to look at how we are investing in infrastructure going forward, no matter what happens, there are more projects than there's going to be dollars forever. The infrastructure needs are almost endless. And so we've got to look at what is this investment getting us? If we do something on I-80, what does that mean to downtown Joliet? How does that help, or does it hurt? In some communities it hurts because it bypasses downtown. So we've got to look at those from that perspective. And as I said early, our state highways are your main streets, and we've got to find a way to work together to make sure that we're bringing value to your main street and not getting in the way. I saw something back there. Yeah.
Hello, my name's David Dodd. I spoke on Monday at the Lewis University, and John, there's one thing I wanted to mention to you. You talked about the overweights and how blah, blah, blah about overweights. As a trucker, I'd rather not have overweights and more loads to haul since I get paid by the load. Okay, so, we need to do something about that. I've been in transportation 47 years, and I feel I wasn't doing my job if I didn't say something about the Ileana. I had a speech here, but...
Yeah, we're not giving speeches anyway, so go ahead.
We're not going what?
We're not giving speeches, we're just telling what the issue is.
Oh, okay, exactly. I wanted to give you my 2 cents worth, but the Ileana is going to cost the truck $37 each way. That's just a lot of money. I squirm when I have to pay $4.50 to go across the Skyway, a road that actually goes someplace. The Ileana, it's not going to cut miles, it's not going to speed up time. All it's going to do is cost a lot of money. Do we need the road? No. Do we want the road? No. Do we want to spend at least $1.3 billion? No. Please. Let's not build the Ileana.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Regina John with CD Server Consultants. I know one of your big issues is where the funding is going to come from. And I do know in the past couple of years, 20 states have increased the gas tax. And as a person who lives in Will County and pays taxes, do I mind paying extra taxes to guarantee that my roads and bridges are safe? No. But I would mind it. You did increase the gas tax and it gets diverted to something else. So I just wanted to...
Yeah, the truth, you're absolutely right. The truth is we have to rebuild trust with the public, with you all, that if we're gonna ask you to spend more money, that we're gonna put it where we say it's gonna go. You've got to trust that we're gonna use the money wisely, that it's gonna be right investments. This governor is all about metrics. That's his business background. And are we getting the best bang for the buck? How does this investment make sure that we're building strong communities, that we're building an economy? How do we make sure we do that? I tell people that I'm a user fee kind of guy. That's what I've always been. Users pay makes sense to me. Having said that, more and more I become thinking that we've got to talk about all beneficiaries of the system. I have friends, and in fact, when I'm in Chicago, I don't have a car, I don't drive, and yet my TV gets to my living room somehow, and my groceries get to the store. And so we've got to think about a fair and equitable way for everybody that benefits pays in a way that's equal and fair. So I think it's a combination of things. I think it's a combination of user fees that still are important, but thinking more broadly about who benefits from this investment and how do we make that a fair way to pay. But unless we can convince you that we're going to use this money wisely, why would you give it to us?
Willing.
Yeah. Yes.
My name is Stacy Myers, and I'm from Open Lands. We are a conservation organization that works to connect people to nature and build vibrant communities throughout our region. And I really think that within this part of our region, we are at a wonderful crossroads. And with this intense focus on long-term planning for a generation rather than short-term, I think with all of the burgeoning uses, freight, high-speed rail, you have our barge traffic, you also have beautiful natural resources and vibrant agricultural communities that pride themselves on being rural and contribute a lot to our economy. With all of these uses becoming more and more close neighbors, to really look at this holistically and determine solutions that make a lot of sense for everyone to thrive, I think that affords us a phenomenal opportunity through Will Connects 2040 as well as other other avenues to be able to fix this right through public-private partnerships as well as the will of the state. And my hope is, I am against the Ilion, but I think that there are a lot of opportunities to be able to do this with alternatives, to be able to move our freight in a way not only for the health of Will County, but for our region and our nation in a way that also preserves and enhances our communities.
Thanks, Stacy. You bring up a point when you bring up public-private partnerships, and I want to think about it a little more broadly. I think the days of one revenue source or one government or one entity paying for things is probably over. And so we've got to think about how we use state money to leverage. How do we use it to, if my friends from the CDB who have been with me for much of this tour, we're talking about schools, they put state money in to leverage local money to build schools. That makes a lot of sense. The schools wouldn't have been built without the state, but it was a shared process. We've got to think about how we do that. We've got to think about how we leverage federal money in a bigger way. And I think most important, we've got to figure out how to leverage, how we use state money to leverage private investment. These are all part of that future. We are just scratching the surface on some of it, and I think we need to broaden our thinking about what we mean by public-private partners and what we mean by leverage. So we look to go that way a lot. I've got time for two more. Or no more.
I got something to say. Just real quick. This young lady was talking about fuel tax. I don't know if anybody knows, but there's going to be a lot of electric cars on the road. They pay no fuel tax, so they're not paying for the roads at all. And then the government gives them a rebate for buying an electric car. What a deal.
Yeah. We've got to think long term. The gas tax today is what it is, but it is not the sustainable revenue source for the future. I mean, motor fuel, standards are going up. It's not just electric vehicles. It's all of our vehicle mileage is going to go up. It's not a sustainable source, so we've got to figure out what to do for today, but then we got to plan for something different in the long term. Anybody else? Well, thank you so much for sharing this with me. I appreciate it, and I look forward to continuing to work together.
Thank you, Randy. That was wonderful. Good information. I expect to see all of you at New Lawrence North, downtown Joliet, on June 12th. So we'll see you there. Meeting's adjourned.